Top 10 missing celebrities who have never been found. Hey, I'm your host Bridget Shields, and let's get right into the video. Number 10. Amelia Earhart. In the 1930s, the American hero was one of the most famous people on the planet, and subsequently had the most famous disappearance in history. In 1937, Earhart set out on a journey that was both ambitious and mysterious. She aimed to be the first woman to fly all the way around the globe. Unfortunately, she never returned. She was flying alongside her navigator Fred Noonan and left Miami on June 1st, and by July the 2nd, they'd made it to New Guinea, with plans to fly to Howland Island, a small, uninhabited landmass between Hawaii and Australia. But the following day, they were nowhere to be found. Somewhere en route, while dealing with poor weather and low fuel, the two lost contact with the Coast Guard and basically vanished into thin air. What ensued was a chaotic search and rescue mission that costed the US Navy $250,000. But unfortunately, it was to no avail, and in January of 1939, she was declared dead. To this day, Earhart's disappearance has become host to a number of conspiracy theories, some people even suggesting that she was abducted by aliens. Number 9. Jimmy Hoffa. He was very famous in the US in the middle of the 20th century, and he was able to work his way up to the position of president of the country's largest and most powerful labor unions. That made him very well known, but his crimes made him notorious. We're talking about jury tampering, conspiracy, wire fraud, mail fraud, and attempted bribery. He also allegedly had several connections with the world of organized crime. But after a 1965 conviction by a federal jury for taking funds from a trucking company and trying to funnel a bribe to a juror's son, Hoffa had no choice but to step down as the union's president. Then on July 30th, 1975, a 61-year-old Hoffa called his wife from a Detroit restaurant to tell her that his lunch appointment with two known organized criminals was cancelled because the guys didn't show up. That's the last time anybody heard from him. So where did he go? Well, there are several theories that mobsters got to him, then buried him in the Giants Stadium in New Jersey, or that Hoffa was the victim of a professional hit. But most people had put his disappearance down to his heavy involvement in the world of organized crime. Number 8. Joe Pichler. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the child and teen actor appeared in a series of supporting roles in a number of movies and TV shows, including Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, Touched by an Angel, Varsity Blues, and most notably as Brennan Newton in 2 sequels in the Beethoven movies. The young star had been working relentlessly in the industry, starring in commercials as early as 6 years old. But unfortunately, he disappeared before he fully reached adulthood. He was so young when he went missing in his Washington State hometown in 2006, only 18. According to the Charlie Project, Pichler spoke with a friend at around 4 a.m. on January 5th, just a few weeks before his 19th birthday. He then proceeded to leave his apartment untouched, unlocked, and with the lights on. Strangely, he only took his wallet and his car keys before he vanished without a trace. But there were allegedly several poems found in his apartment that made it seem like he was not in the best place mentally. 4 days later, Pichler's Toyota Corolla was located in Bremerton, and authorities suspected that Pichler may have jumped to his death off a bridge over the Port Madison Narrows. But there was no real evidence of that, and his remains were never recovered. Number 7. Harold Holt. He was nearly 2 years into his term as Australia's 17th Prime Minister when one day in December of 1967, he decided to go swimming at a deserted Cheviot beach in Victoria, but he never returned to shore. The mystery left Australians scratching their heads and wondering how a nation had managed to misplace an entire Prime Minister. Some people pointed to the weather as a possible cause, considering it was a total windy mess at Cheviot Beach that day, and one eyewitness claimed that the waves were quite high and that there was a fairly strong undercurrent. But it wasn't long before various conspiracy theories started to emerge, with some saying that he purposely faked his own death to start a new life with a mistress, or maybe he was kidnapped by foreign adversaries and interrogated for political secrets. Although Holt's body was never recovered, a 2005 investigation concluded that he drowned. No one was satisfied with that explanation, as those close to him claimed he had incredible powers of endurance underwater. Strange. Number 6. Scott Smith. Canadian band Loverboy was one of the biggest rock bands in the early 80s, with hard-charging hits like Hot Girls in Love and Working for the Weekend, which is still popular to this day. But the legacy of the band was marred by the disturbing disappearance of bassist Scott Smith at sea on November 30th, 2000. According to Rolling Stone, after playing with his band in Vancouver, Scott, his 2 friends, and his girlfriend set out for Mexico on a 37-foot sailboat when disaster struck. They were sailing through a storm which got increasingly violent, and they had just made it off the coast of San Francisco before being swept off by a 25-foot wave. Scott was knocked off the deck of the vessel and into the water, and just like that, he was gone. His friend said of the incident, quote, "We turned back around but couldn't find any of the debris or cushions or the man overboard pole." This was really sad because although the Coast Guard helicopters arrived within 20 minutes of Scott going overboard, they found nothing. After a 133 square mile Coast Guard search, which was a private search and rescue, he was presumed dead. Number 5. Ylenia Carrisi. She was essentially already famous the moment she was born in 1970. Ylenia's father, Albano Carrisi, was a popular Italian singer in the 1960s and won their local version of the Eurovision in 1968 and sold 1 million copies of his song Noel Soul. In 1970, he married American singer-songwriter Romina Power, who was the daughter of mid-century movie superstar Tyrone Power, and they became a highly successful double act in Europe, as well as the parents of 2 kids, including Ylenia. She studied and performed in various shows with her parents, among others, but then decided to take a different path and travel the world. But on December 30th of 1933, Ylenia started a trip in New Orleans. Before that, she was in South and North America. She had been living with a street musician in a rundown hotel in New Orleans who, according to reports, was physically and verbally violent towards her. Ylenia left on the night of January 6, 1994, leaving her passport and luggage behind, but she never materialized and has been missing ever since. Number 4. Bison Dele. This one is extremely sad. When Bison Dele was signed with the Detroit Pistons in 1997 for 7 years and $50 million, the organization landed a versatile power player who was entering his prime. But the hugely successful NBA star decided to search for a deeper meaning of life and eventually became a world-traveling poet. He even learned how to sail and bought a 55-foot catamaran that he dubbed Hakuna Matata and sailed the South Pacific. He and his girlfriend were about to set sail from Tahiti when they had a surprise visitor, his older brother Miles DeBoard, who showed up unexpectedly. On July 7, 2002, Bison set sail. On board were his girlfriend, Serena Carlin, the ship's captain, Bertrand Saldo, and his older brother Miles. But they never made it to Hawaii. 3 people vanished at sea. On July 20th, Miles brought the boat back to Tahiti, but he was the only one on board. Police found blood traces and gunpowder on the ship, and he was later arrested for forgery after stealing Bison's identity. But without evidence of the suspected murder, Miles was never charged. It's important to note that the brothers had a very strained relationship throughout much of their life. Many people suggest that Bison's brother was jealous of him, and he probably spent his life living in his brother's shadow, but we'll never really know what happened for sure. Number 3. Michael Rockefeller. If he was anyone else, his disappearance in 1961 would not have been big news. He would have just been another spoiled rich kid who went looking for adventure and found a little too much of it. But he was Michael Rockefeller, from one of the most iconic families in American history, the son of the famous Nelson Rockefeller. So his disappearance rocked the world of New York socialites, and the world sat up and paid attention. This story is extremely twisted and strange and remains one of the biggest mysteries to date. On November 19th, 1961, he decided to go boating around New Guinea, the island that is split between Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, doing some soul searching or maybe just trying to make his friends back home jealous. According to Smithsonian Magazine, Michael was 7 months into his trip across the Asmat region of New Guinea when his boat overturned after being hit by a wave. He managed to swim to shore to look for help, which is where he disappeared without a trace. From there was a 2-week search involving ships, airplanes, helicopters, but nothing turned up. His disappearance was even the subject of a Netflix documentary, as they attempted to confirm that Michael was eaten by cannibals. Number 9. Hale Boggs. At the time he went missing, Hale Boggs was one of the most famous politicians in America. A Democrat from New Orleans, Boggs had sat on the Warren Commission investigating JFK's assassination. He had a notable career with a personality that many people would call colorful. He even verbally attacked J. Edgar Hoover in Congress, but he really became famous for doubting the lone gunman theory of the JFK shooting. So Boggs was a very prominent person in 1972, which is why the nation was so shocked when he disappeared. On October 16th that same year, Boggs was in Alaska helping a fellow congressman's re-election bid. The two got on a light aircraft heading for a remote city in Alaska, and according to author Robin Barefield, they were never seen again. The thing is that the weather was terrible that day, and as soon as they failed to show up to the city of Juneau, everyone had guessed what had probably happened. Then the biggest search operation in US history was launched, with 90 planes searching 325,000 square miles of Alaska, but no trace of the missing aircraft or its occupants were ever found. To this day, there are some out there who think Boggs was killed for his work investigating the JFK assassination, but it was a small plane and bad weather, so most people wrote it off as an accident. Number 1. Patrick McDermott. He worked as a cinematographer on a handful of short films in the 2000s, but he was way more well known for his personal life, seeing as he was a romantic partner of 9 years of pop star Olivia Newton-John. This one is really crazy. Patrick was on board a Mexico-bound fishing boat called the Freedom of California in June of 2005, but didn't make it back to the ship. The NBC investigative news show even hired a private investigator, Philip Klein, to find the 48-year-old cameraman. The investigator theorized that Patrick faked his death and vanished to cancel out his substantial debts and allow his son to cash in on a $150,000 life insurance policy. In fact, Klein firmly believed that Patrick was alive, citing 17 credible reported sightings, many of them from Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, the last place a cinematographer was ever seen alive. But according to CBC, another investigation ruled that he had likely drowned in the Pacific Ocean. But the most shocking revelation came in 2017 when the Australian magazine New Idea reportedly published pictures that appeared to be Patrick alive and well in Mexico. The photos were heavily criticized and refuted, but many people still believe that he is out there somewhere. Well, that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe.